In our time, as in all times, it is the farmer who is the basic unit of society. The farmer, working in his fields from early morning to early evening, raising the food and raw materials upon which society exists. Life is seldom easy for the European farmer, perennially struggling against the weather, insects, plant diseases, and uncertain prices for his produce. But in few countries of Europe is farming so hard and unrewarding as in Greece. Three-quarters of Greece is either barren mountain, on which nothing will grow but a little timber, or spare and stony hills, good chiefly for grazing goats and sheep. To the Greek farmer, scratching out a living for himself on whatever gravelly soil he can get, land, fertile land in the level valleys and river deltas, is the most enviable of possessions. But the river deltas of Greece, built out into the sea by silt from the hills, are not always fertile, as anyone in Anthili could tell you. Anthili is a small village on the delta of the Spercheios River in central Greece. It is much like any other Greek village. The one thing to note about Anthili is its unpromising situation. It stands on a flat plain the river has built up between the sea and the famed pass of Thermopylae, where the ancient Greeks suffered one of the classic defeats of history. Since it emerged from the shallow sea, this plain has been an utterly barren wasteland, its soil filled with alkali salt. There are 250,000 acres of such wasteland in Greece, considered, like the plain around Anthili, to be absolutely worthless. At least it was considered so. But then, one day in 1949, a couple of American jeeps came jolting over the plain.
That first day driving to Anthili, I didn't know what we were going to find. The Marshall Plan had sent me out from Athens because I'm familiar with the problems alkali land presents. I wanted to look the place over and take some samples of the soil, see if anything could be done to wash out all that salt, make it fit for farming. It was worth a try. There were 10,000 acres of alkali land right there around Anthili, if it could only be reclaimed. I took my soil samples back to the laboratory at the University of Athens for detailed examination and consultation with experts from the Greek Ministry of Agriculture. On the strength of what the test showed, we decided to head right back for Anthili. Not many months left before planting time, and if we were going to reclaim all that land, we'd have to do it in a hurry. I got the president of the village to call the people together, the ones who own the land. I told them my name was Walter Packard. Out in California, in my own country, I'd licked the same problem by growing rice. I explained to them how the flooding of the land necessary for rice crops washes the alkali out of the surface soil, and deep drainage removes the salty groundwater. The men were pretty skeptical at first, and why not? Who was I? Somebody they'd never heard of, trying to tell them that all this land everybody around there knew was no good could be made to grow crops. For all they knew, I was just some amateur farmer from the United States. Before long, though, we began to understand each other better. Finally, for a small share of whatever crops there might be, 40 farmers offered to rent their land. That was all we needed for a start. We all knew that if we were going to get any crops in that year, we were going to have to move fast. Irrigation and drainage ditches had to be dug and the land leveled and boarded. It was already in the middle of January. Equipment was supplied and all work financed by the Greek Ministry of Agriculture through the allocation of Marshall Plan funds. At one time, 500 villagers were at work on the project. It was the toughest kind of digging. Ground dry and hard on the surface, and under the surface, salt water. But they dug miles of ditch and channel. They dug miles of it to drain the salty water off, and they dug more miles to bring in fresh from the river, to wash the soil. By the time this fresh water had soaked into the soil, it was fuller of salt than the ocean. So they pumped it out and shot it down to the sea 3 miles away. Finally, just in time, the canals and rice paddies were done and ready for flooding. The best variety of rice in Italy was imported and planting began. A little late, but still in time. For the next 6 weeks, the farmers just waited to see. Pretty doubtful if anything would grow, but they were willing to be shown. It grew all right. As time went on, most of the land was covered with a blanket of waving grain. For weeks, while the rice grew bigger and bigger, fresh water lay in the paddies, soaking into the soil. When the time came to draw off the water and dry the land for harvest, you could tell from the salt crusted along the drainage canals how much good the soaking had done. The crop they got that first season was a good one. Not the best, but big enough at the going high prices for rice to cover all the costs of reclamation and production and still pay a good rental. Nowadays, when I go back to Anthili, farmers are all interested and enthusiastic. We've increased the area planted to rice 10 times over since that first year. A lot of others have rented land on their own and got a good crop too. It's been the same with all but one of 4 similar demonstration plantings we made in various parts of Greece. That one showed better results the second year. The way things look, Greece may soon be growing so much rice she won't have to import a pound of it. That will save a lot of foreign exchange she needs so badly. I always enjoy getting back to Anthely. I especially like being there at harvest time. That's a nice time of the year in Anthely. Crops are in and everybody's feeling good. It's pleasant to be reminded that stories sometimes turn out well in real life, too. Anthely is not a town where there is much change from year to year. But the last time I was there, I found something new. Something that sort of pleased me. They'd named a street after me.